Well, hello everybody, Apologia, friends and family. I'm so glad to be here today to share with you some really important tools for creating schedules for your homeschool, and also just some really important things you want to consider when you're thinking about how you're going to schedule your homeschool, like the science behind the lesson length, also how to make it easier for you as a homeschool mom for this to really be a schedule that works, a workable schedule. And so I'm going to talk about those things with you today. My name is Jeannie Fulbright. For those of you who don't know me, I am the author of Apologia's Elementary Science series. We have Exploring Creation with Astronomy, Botany, well, that was chemistry and physics. We have chemistry and physics. We have anatomy and physiology. We have all the 3 zoology books, which cover all the animals in creation. And all of my books come with notebooking journals. And this is going to fall over again. And also, of course, audiobooks that I read the entire book to make your life easier. And also, I am a veteran homeschool mom. My children are all in college or have graduated from college, and they all went to college on scholarship. And me and my husband, we banded together to create a book called My College Roadmap. And what it does is it takes your children basically through everything they need to know and figure out and think about and write down and keep records of everything that's going to help them not only get into college but get scholarships. So that's what my college roadmap is really about, because I went on that journey with my kids, and it was a lot to learn, and there was very little out there that gave the information in a simplistic way. So that's my latest book. Well, not just my latest, actually. Botany is just came out, but so that's who I am. Veteran homeschool mom. I live in Atlanta, Georgia with my husband, and I love to share with homeschoolers, new or all you veteran homeschoolers, just some tips and tools that made my homeschool journey and my homeschool experience easier or more effective. And that's what I want to share with you today, some of the things that I learned along the way as far as scheduling and some of the important things you want to think about when creating a schedule for your children. So the first thing that I really want to emphasize is one of the goals, really one of the overarching goals of our homeschool experience and the time that we spend teaching, educating, moving our children from grade to grade, year to year, up through high school into college, is we really want to move our children towards independence, to be independent learners. This is so important. I didn't even realize how important it was until I realized I had done it kind of incidentally, because I was writing books, so I really needed my kids to be independent so I could get the books written and all the stuff that came along with the books. But so I chose curriculum that really helped my children to be able to be independent. And here's what I learned. I know a college professor he was a college professor, really good university, and he had noticed that his top students in his science courses were all homeschoolers. And this was years ago, back in the 90s. And he thought, how can all my top students, my favorite students, my most involved students in these courses all have been homeschooled? What is this thing called homeschooling? So he did a lot of research into it. He spoke to a lot of the homeschool leaders, and he found out that the reason that these kids were doing so well in college and were so engaged in college was not because of the curriculum they used, but because of how they were taught. And he said they were taught by the books that their parents gave them. They would give them the book and say, okay, here's your curriculum. You go on and do it. You're in charge of your education. Enjoy. So essentially, the parents, by high school, students were completely independent. They were independent learners by high school because as a homeschool mom or dad, you are very busy with a great many responsibilities, not to mention not leaving out the whole food preparation aspect of life. There are so many things you have to do. Laundry, I mean, in your training, child training, just all the stuff that goes along with being a mom or dad. And so you really need your homeschool schedule, your homeschool world to be as seamless as possible. And having your children become independent learners, they learn how to feed themselves. Once they read to learn, they are now, once they learn to read, they are now able to read to learn. And so what you want to do is you want to choose curriculum that makes it easier. Some of the things you want to do is look at how much don't get curriculum that requires a teacher's manual. First thing, you don't need to be the teacher. The book can teach the child. That is actually one of the most important things you need to think about does this book allow my child to do the work independently? Another thing you want to choose is if you can choose curricula that has audiobooks. For example, my books, I have an audiobook to go with these are CDs, but you can also just download the audio from the Apologia website, and pretty soon we're going to have them on Amazon, I believe. But it's really helpful as a mom when you can have somebody else taking up some of the slack, because you are gonna be busy and it will get overwhelming if you have to do every single thing. You don't want to try to replicate the public school where this teacher is lecturing and trying to teach the child something that she understands. No, we give them rich materials or audios or videos to learn from, or courses. Apologia offers so many great courses online. So we want to give them materials that they can learn from, where they can take in the input of the information on their own, and then they can basically teach themselves. And once a child has learned how to take authority over their own education, when they go to college, they're so much more successful because they have not been spoon-fed. They've not been dependent on a lecturer. They have literally decided to educate themselves. They are self-educating, because every time you want to learn something, for example, you're trying to learn about homeschooling. Some of you are trying to refine your homeschool. Some of you are learning about some other skill or interest. And what we do when we're doing that is we are educating ourselves. And so how much more we learn when we choose to pursue our own interests and find out everything there is to know about it. We buy books, we go online, we do all kinds of stuff to learn more and more and more. Well, our children are no different. They do not need to be spoon-fed an education, dependent on a fallible human to lecture them. Don't choose curriculum with a teacher's manual. Choose something that your child can learn from on their own. And that is really the key to successful homeschooling, because by the time that they get to high school, they have learned how to teach themselves the way we as adults learned to do after college, or whenever, because we needed to learn that in order to be successful in whatever it is that we chose to do with our lives, whether it was to play tennis or to homeschool our kids. So whatever we want to learn, we can do it on our own. And so that's what we want to teach our children to do. And we do that incrementally. So we start out where, it's a young child who can't even read. Well, you have to be there's no independent learning with learning to read. So you do have to be very involved. But just like, I remember when my children were little and I would be wanting to swing. We went to the park and they wanted to get in the swings. And remember when they're babies and they're in those little bucket swings and you have to push them, and if they're going anywhere, it's because you're pushing them. And then they graduate to the little seated swing, and guess what they want? They want you to push them. And guess what happens when you tell them, I need you to pump your legs? Most kids are saying, no, push me. It's too hard to pump my legs. And you'll find that pushback with your kids when you say, read the instructions and do this. And they're going to be, can you just tell me how to do it? Can you read the instructions to me? You've got to resist being the one to continue pushing the child who can pump their legs and swing, because once they're able to do that, then they are able to fly as high as they want to go on any kind of swing there is. And we have armed them with the tools to do it by encouraging them to be independent when they're capable of it. Of course, all our children are different. Some children are going to be slower to independent learning. My oldest child, just real bright and self-motivated, just motivated person. She was independent pretty much right away. I mean, by third grade, I just gave her the list of everything she needed to do, and she was on it. And very, I had her grading her own papers because I talked to her about her vision for her future. And they have no reason to cheat if they're learning because they have a future. And this is really about a biblical worldview that you are special. God created you with a purpose. You have a career, something really fabulous that God created you to do. And He needs you to know everything you need to know and to know it well in order to be able to reach that future that He has for you. And so that's really empowering your children with a vision. I always was very much about giving my children a vision for their future. You want to do this? Well, guess what? You're going to need to get through this math curriculum because that's required for this, if you want to be in the science field, if you want to be a computer science. Both of my boys are computer science majors. One has a minor in exercise science. So, and my youngest daughter is a math major. They all go to University of Georgia, except for the one who graduated from the University of Georgia and with a journalism degree. She's got a great job now. Journalism's, easy to get a job these days. Pretty much everybody's wanting to know what's going on. So I would just really try to help them see their future and give them, the Bible says, without a vision, my people cast off restraint. And if your children have a vision for their future, an idea about something they want to be or do, even if it seems unrealistic, we need to encourage them to develop those dreams. And they may change. My son who exercise science and computer science, he wanted to be a zoologist most of his life. But then he changed when he got into his senior year in high school and got into college. He really had a different vision for his life, but I encouraged him in zoology, filled his life with so many opportunities to learn more, to become an expert in that field. And it was really encouraging for him because even though that didn't end up being his career, it gave him a vision for his future and motivation to do what he needed to do in order to reach the future that God had for him. So your job as a parent is really to empower your children with a vision for their future, which will cause them to restrain themselves to do the work that is necessary to reach that future. And I will say, one of the really great features about my college roadmap is that there is a personality test in chapter 2, and it basically, the child goes through all the questions and then they figure out what are their main and maybe their sub personalities, and then they can read about the person that they will be as in their career. And then I have a list of careers for each personality, what would be options for them in both business, education, legal, science and research and engineering, health, public service and safety, creative and communication, technology, nonprofit ministry, and other. And then also I have careers to avoid in here. And so this took years of research to develop this personality test and match it to careers. And so this is a way, if you have a middle schooler or even just an older elementary student, that would really help to empower them with a vision for their future. And so give them a vision, and as you do this, you're giving them the tools they need to be able to do the work independently. And that is so helpful to you, to have your children being self-motivated and having just the energy and the desire and the drive to do the work. So let's talk about schedules. I tried a lot of different schedules before I found what worked. And so I'm going to go through, there's a lot of them that would have worked in certain circumstances. So I'm going to go through all the schedules that I thought were great Actually, I'm just going to go through 4 different ways that you could do scheduling with your homeschool. And you can try each, or choose the one you think is going to work better. I'll tell you why some of them didn't work as well as others. But let me just begin. I've got 2 different. I did a whiteboard schedule when they were young, and okay, these are not my children's names, but I'm showing this to, let's see if I can get it over here. So this is one way I did a schedule. And I had a big whiteboard that was set up, and essentially I just had all the subjects. We had math, and then spelling or phonics, depending whether they had learned or were learning to read or had learned to read, and all the other subjects that they might do. And then I had their names listed out, and in addition to that, they had a little marker there, and so essentially I'm empowering them with the ability to choose what subject they're going to do. Now, the reason this became so important to me is because when I was homeschooling, when I started homeschooling more than one student, my children would come up to me and they would say, okay, I finished spelling, now what do I do? And then I would just think, okay, well, have you done math? Yeah. Okay, well, have you done your English? No. But where is it? It's just kind of like, it just became like I was required to answer all these questions in the middle of trying to teach a child to read, or whatever it was. I was writing a book, whatever it was I was doing. And it was a distraction to me to have to constantly think about, okay, what to do next. And so what this did is it empowered my children to take control of their day, of their homeschool day. These are all the subjects we got to do, and maybe one of your students doesn't have to do a certain subject or whatever, but then they would just go through and they would make check marks. I would put their name. I had one where I put the subjects at the top, and then I did it another way, and I put their names at the top and the subjects down the schedule. So what that did is it enabled my children to be in control of their education. It's sort of a gentle move out of that baby swing and gets them learning how to pump their legs. Okay, I don't need to ask mom what I need to do next. It's all there. I can figure out what it is. And they began to take authority and empower them to take ownership of their education when you give them the schedule to do, rather than you being in charge of the schedule and having to check everything off and you're the one in charge. That's just taken too much, I would say, responsibility that does not help your child. It doesn't benefit your child when you're in charge of the schedule and you're telling them what to do all day long. That actually doesn't build independent learners, and it doesn't give your children a sense of autonomy over their future and over their career, over their life, over their education, because it's their education. And I always tell my children, this is your education. This is for you. This is not for me. This is for you, because God has a plan for your life, and He wants you to do what the things He's called you to do, and you can't do it without at least a basic education. So that was really helpful for them to learn to be independent, and also to choose what they were going to do next, what they wanted to do next. They knew they had to check all the boxes. But another thing that I would say is that if you find that your children enjoy one subject and are able to spend a long time and just really can't wait to get to it, it might behoove you at that point to put that set, because they might want to spend a long time on that subject, which will cut into the day and their energy levels. And so you might want to put that one, as far as not being too controlling over your children's education, but giving them the opportunity to say, okay, this is your reward, this subject. It's your favorite subject. We're going to do it last. I do want to talk to you about subjects that you should combine as a family. Now, I know in public schools, they have all the grades separated, and they all have like their 3rd grade book and your 4th grade book and your 5th grade book. In most cases, and in most subjects, you do not need to do that in with your children. They can, especially if you have elementary kids, or up through somewhat into middle school, 6th grade, K through 6, these kids can learn science together. Of course, your 6th grader is going to retain more, but it gives your younger children an opportunity to learn at a higher level. They will retain a lot. They're going to feel knowledgeable a lot, and your family will truly come together in unity and grow closer. And that's really one of the most amazing things about homeschooling, is seeing how close your family grows. As siblings, and just your relationship with your children will really be special and unique and memorable. It's something they'll look back with fond memories of their years growing up as a family unit. And so the more subjects that you can combine, the better. Other subjects that are great to combine is social studies, history, government, that sort of thing is great to combine. Now, I do want to say with science, all of my books are designed to be used with every child between the ages of 6 or 5 and what's a 6th grader now? Is that 11 or 12? So all of those grades, you would just choose one book. You would only need one book rather than getting a bunch of different books, which can be very expensive. You just get one book, and then each child has their own journal, notebook and journal to do, and then they're all learning together. And this is the same for history. You can choose, most homeschool history curricula is written to be done with all the ages in a certain level, sometimes through middle school, all together, because they're all learning at their own level. The activities they do, they're doing at their own level. And this not only makes it easier for you, it also builds a stronger family unit. Brings more joy in the learning. You can take field trips. If you're doing my swimming creatures book, you can go to the aquarium and together, and everybody's learning the same things. They're going to be excited together, and it's just really builds family unity. So I would say, as much as possible, pick curricula that you can do with all your children together. Best if you're going to be busy or working from home, that you would use curricula that offers an audiobook, so that you are not the one having to always do all the reading. There also, another thing I did is I had my children were all pretty close in age, and so I had a younger child that was really bright in math, and then the older one was pretty good but not quite as bright, and they were 2 years apart, but so I put them together in the same math. I taught up to the higher level, and any subject that I put them together in, grammar, or I just taught to the higher level, and the younger one was able to learn. Listen, here's the way it works in homeschool curricula and in public school curricula, is they basically teach the same thing over and over again, and just add a few sprinkles of extra information the next year. That's including math and the way they do science and all those other subjects. We choose in our homeschool to go deep in a subject and really learn it well. That's why all my science books cover one subject for an entire year. Some people can do them in a half a year if they don't have really young children. So that is really one of my suggestions for you, is try to combine as much as possible. This will help you so much with your schedule. So the last thing I want to talk about is the scientific studies that have shown how long your lessons should be. So the problem we have when we make our lessons too long is that we have children who cannot pay attention, and they're unable, physically, mentally, emotionally unable to pay attention for too long. And if you think that the kids have an hour for science in public school, they're not spending the whole hour on science. In fact, there's a lot of shuffling into class and putting things away and having conversations and getting stuff out, and there's just teachers discussing behavioral problems, and it's just, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't involve teaching in that 1 hour. And so they have done studies that have shown that in most cases, the actual input, I'm going to call it input, which is learning of new material in the average classroom every day for each course, is 4 minutes to 15 minutes. That is the input of new material that most teachers accomplish in a classroom. They've done a lot of studies on this, and really the shorter period, the lower number is actually the most common numbers that you'll see in the actual teaching time. So don't imagine that you need to develop an hour for science, an hour for English, an hour for math, and then require the child to spend the full hour doing that. That's impossible. They'll finish the curriculum they'll finish the whole year curriculum in 3 months if you do. And I knew parents that had their children go through 3 years of curriculum in 1 year because they just felt like the children needed to be doing an hour. Don't do that. They're not going to love learning. We want our children to love learning. I was really all about my children loving learning, and they took that love of learning into college, career, and just love what they're doing in college and career. So really, the scientifics, there's been a song, the attention span is really important. The attention a child gives to a subject is really all about, I'm going to have to move this because I'm getting too hot because the AC is right below there. So the attention span is the amount of time that the child has the whole mental force of their mind focused on the subject at hand. When their whole mental force is not focused on the subject, they're not paying attention. And guess what's happening when they're not paying attention? Either you're wasting your time reading, or the lecturer is wasting their time lecturing, whatever it is, because they're not learning it, they're not retaining it. And they did a study, and I talked about this study in my last talk, but I'll just mention it briefly because there's several other studies I want to mention. But they did a study of a medical school. They divided it in two, and they had one of the medical school class doing the typical hour lecture and hour study period before the next lecture. And they did with the other class 30-minute lecture, 30-minute study period, 30-minute lecture, 30-minute study period. And it was at the end of the year, the boards that these two groups took, the ones that had 30 minutes lectures, they had a statistically significant increase in their board scores because the amount of time that they were learning, the amount of time they were getting input was shorter. And they've done workplace studies on adult workplaces where they're trying to educate them and teach them things. And they found that even adults, if they broke it up into 20 minutes chunks of information, they were able to retain it, remember it, and really engage with it a lot better. They've done a ton of studies on I'm just using this as an example because I believe this is true for not just videos, but they've done a ton of studies on the optimal video length for attention span. And they found with children, they've done this with adults too, but they found that when a child is listening to a video lecture, that the optimal length of retention of the subject was actually 9 minutes for children. 9 minutes. And then anything after 9 minutes, 6 to 9 minutes, anything after 9 minutes, the child's ability to recall the information, because they weren't paying attention anymore, just went down. And so if medical school students, if these studies show 6-minute video, hey, TED Talks are required to be 18 minutes or less. If a TED Talk knows that people can't pay attention for longer than 18 minutes, we cannot make our children sit down and try to increase their input to longer than 15 minutes because they won't retain it. What's the point in reading to them or teaching them or having them watch something if they're not going to remember it? That's just a waste of everybody's time. It would be better not to finish the curriculum, but have them remember every single thing they learned rather than finishing the curriculum and they only remembered a tiny fraction of it. Really, you know what, and here's the other thing that you probably already know if you had your kids in public school or private school, and if you haven't, this is the truth, they never finish curriculum in the public and private schools. They skip through chapters and lessons, they don't finish it. And so the fact that you have this whole curriculum, don't feel like you have to finish every page of it. In fact, when your child has mastered a subject or mastered a thing, move on to the next. Don't make them do pages and pages of practice problems or whatever it is. Let them move on at the pace that suits them. And so that's just really, I want to encourage you not to require more than 10 to 15 minutes of input and then maybe 10 to 15 minutes of output, which is doing a creative exercise or activity. For example, in my books, you'll when you learn about the earth, one of the creative activities I have them do is make an advertisement to sell the earth, because that gives them creatively involved in what they've learned. Everything they remember about the earth, they can try to put in their little advertisement. And so creative assignments that engage the children will be much more effective in really helping our children to retain the information they learn, and just know shorter lessons, they'll learn more, combine as much as possible, empower them with the ownership of their education, and help them to become independent learners. So that is my schedules. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, you can go to my website, jeanniefulbright.com, and email me through my website. And there's also a ton of articles on there about different teaching modalities and methodologies and things that will really help make your homeschool smooth. So I appreciate y'all coming and listening, and please do, if you have any other questions or comments, please ask your questions in the comment section, and I will come back and answer those as well. Thanks so much.